Thank you. Next question is from Assembly Member Berry, and it is on property guardians.
Thank you, Chairman. There are 2 million private renters in London, and we know that with rents in the capital getting higher and higher, any option that makes renting more affordable will be tempting to many Londoners. This is clearly one reason why some people, when looking for a place to live, consider becoming a property guardian, which often costs less than renting privately. But whilst this option may cost less, the guardian may be accepting a weak position in terms of other rights. The GLA Group does not currently use property guardians on our own land. In my view, where property guardians are used by property owners, whether public sector or private, the owners should take appropriate steps to ensure guardians understand what they're signing up for. As you know, I also want to improve the private rented sector across the board. Although my powers as Mayor in the private rented sector are limited, I'm determined to help drive up standards for London's private renters. This is why, for instance, I want to support boroughs to introduce landlord licensing schemes where they're needed, and why my offices are developing plans for a database of rogue landlords. Clearly, building more new and affordable housing is also essential to helping private renters, both through building well-managed, privately rented blocks and through building new affordable homes for private renters to buy. By building new homes, we can start to make housing more affordable in London, both by increasing supply and by making sure more of the new homes we build are genuinely affordable.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Mayor, for those answers. I'm glad to see that you have comments to make about the lack of rights that people who are property guardians suffer from. You mentioned that the GLA Group doesn't use property guardian companies. I also note from a previous answer you've given to me that Transport for London did use them but has stopped. So can I ask what evidence was used to review that decision and make that decision?
Well, I mean, there was an issue about the rights guardians have and how much they're told in advance of the rights they have. A decision was taken to, not just the GLA property, but all property associated with our functional bodies. I've not got the information she's asking for to hand, but I'm happy to write to her in relation to some of the information and experience we have in relation to property guardians.
That would be really useful to see more details of that. Thank you. While there's lots of evidence to suggest that some property guardian companies are packing people into properties with poor living conditions, increasingly high rents in fact, and with minimal rights because they're only licensed and not legally regarded as tenants, I have recent figures from local councils that show that more than 1,000 property guardians now live in publicly owned properties that they own. So can I ask what lessons borough councils who use property guardian companies can learn from the GLA Group on this?
Well, it's not for me to comment on. I mean, I've been tempted a number of times to get involved in local authority issues. It's not for me to comment on that. I saw in preparation for today, the work that she had done in relation, the Assemblyman had done in relation to the Syria. I think it's important to be aware of the downside because it can appear attractive. I think, it's a decision for local authorities to take. There may well be good reasons why local authority goes for guardian rather than the other modes of tenancy, but I think it's not for me to comment on how different local authorities manage their portfolio in this particular issue.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, hopefully when the evidence that you send me comes through, we can share that with the local authorities too. What I've also found is that there are hundreds of non-residential public buildings that are empty, but there are also many citizens groups, community groups who want to make use of them as meanwhile spaces. These might be community and cultural organisations struggling to find spaces for their projects. They might be affordable workspace non-profits who would spruce them up and use them for small businesses. And on the residential side, there are many people forming cooperatives who might want to make use of them, of flats that are more ethically than the property guardian companies. So for the empty GLA buildings where you don't currently have property guardians, will you look at some of these uses and also encourage councils to explore these meanwhile uses as a better alternative?
I mean, what has been said, I mean, the Assemblyman was right to raise this issue. Can I just explain for other colleagues who may not be aware of the concerns that have been articulated? There are a number of companies who offer guardian services to landlords as a way of protecting a vacant property. Whether it's residential or commercial. There are other options available, whether it's professional security guards, installation of physical security measures, alarms, CCTV. But she's right to remind us that actually it can be a win-win if, for example, the community user goes into it with open eyes. So it means a vacant property is being used, looked after, but also there's a good reason and function coming out of it. And that's why I'm reluctant to give an injunction from here to what local authorities may well be doing with non-residential properties or residential properties, and some community good coming out of it.
Thank you. I mean, in terms of the GLA Group buildings, I have a very long list of organisations who are working on these kinds of initiatives that I would be very, very happy to put you in touch with if you're interested
Okay,
in
well,
that.
with your happiness, can
Yes.
you end there, please, because your time is up?
Is that correct, Chair?
Well, they've got a clock here, and you have a clock.
I was led to understand we might get 2 minutes grace.
Yes, we gave you flexibility. All right, you can have a bit more.
I'm working on the fact that I just had 50 seconds grace, and I may have 1 minute, 10 seconds.
I'll add that on as well.
Sorry, Mr Mayor.
So the short answer is I'm always happy to look at areas that some of them think aren't being done. It's not for me to defend previous administrations, but I'm happy to do that list and work with stakeholders.
That's excellent. And my final question is that some properties looked after by property guardians don't even comply with health and safety standards, and councils struggle to enforce this. You answered a question of mine that I put on 20th of July on this. Have you since been able to speak to the Department for Communities and Local Governments to seek clarification of the law relating to buildings occupied by property guardians and their licensing as houses of multiple occupation?
In preparation of this, I chased this up. I've asked my officers to chase up DCLG about the issue. I understand they're seeking further information from CLG. As soon as they write to me, I'll write to the Assembly member.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks very much. And the